of information. When we don't have the tools, the strategies, the conscious support to process our emotion, it forms what's called a limbic reptilian holding pattern. And I want to point out a couple of things here because it's really interesting that in that particular moment of emotional overdrive, a process called T-1 is set into motion. Now T-1 means perceived trauma T, -1 millisecond. So the limbic brain goes like this. It's like, whoa, I'm in this emotional circumstance and this is so intense and I can't deal with everything that's going on. I'm overwhelmed and I'm so anxious and worried, and the limbic brain goes like this. And it takes a snapshot picture. It takes an audio file. It takes all the sensory stimuli of what you're smelling, what you're tasting, what you're feeling in that moment, and it puts it into a file, a data system, where those sensory experiences are saved. But then the tape backs up 1 millisecond. So it causes us to go into a hypnotic, trance-like state where we're programmed to forget. We're programmed to forget. Now, those of you lifeliners, as you're hearing me say that, you know, in one of our portals, we make statements that match that. We're programmed to forget because we can't process the emotions, and nobody can help us process the emotions. So now, every time this memory that's emotionally charged, that hasn't been processed, gets triggered. Well, what triggers it? It's the color orange. What triggers it? And the smell of spaghetti. What triggers it? Somebody looking at you in that way or having that tone of voice. And then boom, you're in this limbic reptilian holding pattern. And your body, rather than adapting to the moment, like I was talking about in the last video, and with muscle reflex testing, you maladapt as if that particular situation was going on for the first time again and again and again. Here's the kicker. Your brain and your body, as much as you got 3 of them in there, your brain and your body are not designed to know the difference between memory, reality, or imagination. Our brains, when we get triggered and a memory comes up,
turn off the fucking
your
TV,
body
man.
instinctually reacts as if it's actually going on. Like being in a movie theater and it's scary as heck, but it's not really going on. You're just looking at it and you're gripping and your heart's racing and your mind's like, get me out of here. This is the way that we're designed. Brain and body don't know the difference between memory, reality, and imagination. So these emotions that are charged when they get triggered, the real chemicals, they're called neuropeptides. Now I know I'm saying like these crazy words, but neuropeptides are proteins. They're molecules in chemistry in your body that match emotions. And when these molecules of emotion get triggered, the pituitary gland starts pumping these chemicals out throughout our circulation. And it's sent through the capillaries, the small blood vessels, to every single cell. Receives these emotionally charged chemicals, these neuropeptides, and they bind to receptor sites. And these emotionally charged chemicals that bind to receptor sites, those receptors that the emotions are binding to, those receptors that the emotions are binding to, are the same receptors that heroin binds to.
Alright, that's enough of that. So anyways, sorry about all that again. I wanted to get that across. It's going to be important for what I'm going to talk about. It's going to take me a while to probably get through all these points because I didn't write any of them down either, but I will do my best. So yesterday, I played this clip, and then I did a video after explaining why I was playing it. And I was trying to hit on the fact that that limbic brain they're talking about, he's talking about, is an emotional brain that gives you these emotions. And these emotions rule us, basically. Now, when something traumatic happens, and he says you get this crescendo of emotion that is too much for you to handle, basically, If you're a child, maybe your neocortex is not completely developed. Maybe that's why you only start having memories past a certain point. I got to do some more study to figure that out. It's probably in the next few chapters I read. But what happens is your limbic system has that emotional reaction, and like you said, it's that whatever it's PT trauma or PT minus a second or something like that, because it takes a step back. So whatever happened that made you go through that trauma, it almost activates or becomes like a trigger in your mind, like hypnosis trigger. You can have triggers put into you from a good hypnosis or a hypnotist to put yourself in a trance, let's say. You can do this yourself as well. I've done it. And it's probably not as intense as a real hypnosis if you were to get somebody who's good at it to do it, but it works nonetheless. You can put triggers in your mind for a whole bunch of things, and that's one of the real ways I was able to, manage to get those songs. Because hearing a song and getting an emotional response from it is one thing, but thinking of that song to get the emotional response is a little bit harder. So I put the trigger in me to just be able to think about that, and that would trigger the emotional response. I did that myself, and I'm pretty damn proud of doing that just by reading some hypnosis books and about the human body and emotion and so on and shit like that. But nonetheless, this is exactly what happens. One of the reasons I'm probably able to understand it so much is because it happens to everybody, and everybody has this potential to be able to do this. Not just guys like me that read and listen to books all the time instead of watching TV, which is also important. But anyways, I'm going to tie this into polarity and demons and what's going on the planet and good and evil, so just bear with me. I'm going to get somewhere, and it's going to be, I don't know, I think it's going to be good, but who knows? Because I don't have an ultimate ending in my head yet. But anyways, so that happens. You suffer some trauma in school, whether it's from an abusive parent to being teased at school. Well, whatever happened at that moment, like he says, the color orange or the smell of spaghetti. So one of those things were going through your neocortex, whether it was you visualizing that color or you smelling that smell. That was happening at the exact same moment where all those emotions were firing through. And so it's almost like it stamps that these things created this emotional response. But because this limbic system, I don't know if it's because of the neocortex and when it evolved, and this is obviously something put in there for us to not deal with our emotion, to be able to keep on keeping on and not have something small ruin your life, potentially, maybe. Once again, more study is needed on my part, but the part I want you to focus on or retain is that, these are the things that people say you have to heal the child within you. You hear that a lot in the spiritual community. Even in the book Kabbalah, The Great Work of Self-Transformation, tells you to seek, to go get a counselor or a therapist to, give you a one-over. That's for many reasons, but another reason is to, help identify some of these younger traumas, because sometimes you can't identify them until you speak with someone else who is trained to pull that shit out of you. Otherwise, how are you going to remember something that you can't remember? You know what I mean? It's very hard. Like I said, if you can ask your subconscious mind via a tape recorder, via doing a sigil to help enlighten you, and then get stuff in dreams like I have, which was nothing like that with my parents or whatever, but the fear of spirits was tormenting me, and every time something would go bump in the night, I was just shut down, and anyways. But this is what I want to talk about. This is how powerful this force is within your mind to protect you. It's your own mind, it's your own body. It's these elemental forces, and whatever force, let's say it was, hate or envy or fear or ridicule. One of these forces took over your body whenever something happened to you in a younger grade 3. Everybody started laughing at you for something. Maybe your dick was hanging out of your shorts. Your dick was hanging out of your shorts, and everybody saw it and started laughing at you. So your mind did this fucking thing, and now whatever smell or something you were seeing at that time, when that thing gets repeated in your life and those same emotions get shot through you, you're almost like in a daze. It puts you on an automatic autopilot, and you don't remember what's happening, what's going on, whatever. He gives the example of hitting a wall every time that happens because you're not conscious of it, and then you have this headache that you don't know about. And I've seen documentation, because Peterson talked about this, how certain people would have, I forget what he called it, but anyways, these people would have all these excuses for why they're something's wrong with the bottom of their leg, and then the therapist or a doctor would do something specific. I'm sorry, this is very vague, but when they did that, they would have an emotional response come over them, and they'd be crying, and they would know exactly what happened in that leg. But once they stopped doing that, they would, even though they already said it and they remember what they said and they know what happened, when the next person asks, straight out of autopilot, they answer the same thing they answered before. And this is after finding out what actually happened to the leg. That's how powerful the system is. So yesterday I was saying this is where the deities are. This is where, all the deities, that we, when it comes to like the planets, let's just go with that. But I think all of them are probably in there somewhere, although that have been recorded and used, and we're given titles and names to these emotions for a reason. And it could be different names, could be different pictures, but every culture probably has a similar one. But this is why this is important, because when these things happen, let's say you're a parent and you witness this happen to your kid, and you end up putting it together that something like that happens, where you might think some kind of demon, some kind of possession, some kind of monster, you might think whatever the case is. If you go back long enough ago, Egypt, the first time before Christianity, let's say, and that's vague again, but I think you know what I mean, when Seth, or Set, I think it was Seth first and then Set, the uncle, whatever, if you want to go Lion King route, was the uncle, and I think it was the uncle also in movies and all that. Sometimes it's the king's brother, and the son who was supposed to be king is uncle. So anyways, he was the bad deity. However, even though he was the deity that the Egyptians and other cultures had the same deity in different forms, but same basic thing, this deity still had a temple. This deity still had a place of worship. People still gave this deity offering. You say, why the fuck would they give the bad deity offerings? Well, that's pretty self-explanatory. If your culture is telling you this bad deity causes all the evil in the world, well, what are you doing? You're gonna just ignore that and say, fuck you, I'm going with the other guy, you're a piece of shit. Like that. Well, good luck with that shit. You're better off giving it an offering and saying, you know what, I don't know what happened, but please, don't do this shit to me. And here you go, I'll hook you up. I think a lot of this pack stuff and sell your soul shit comes from this stuff. Comes from this line of thinking, meaning you got to give offerings for the rest of your life to Satan so he doesn't have a hold on you. And you can say, fuck that, I ain't going to do that. And then what happens? Well, then Satan gets a hold of you. But it's not really, it's just your emotions. You're repressing those emotions within you. You're acting like you don't have these bad emotions within you, that you don't have this capability, even though we do. And it doesn't matter how you slice it. Whether you slice it up that God is the Almighty and He created Satan or Lucifer or both and all the demons, well then, these are both entities created by the Creator. Your God created all these entities. Alright, and they can fuck with you, and He kicked them out of heaven because He didn't want them near Him, but it was okay for them to be just around you to fuck with you. You know what I mean? Or, my line of thinking is they're all thought forms and egregores. It's the way the humans, back before whatever, decided to deal with this shit. And you can say, well, that's kind of weird, it's kind of primitive. Would they really do that? Well, Christianity, Judaism, every religion right now does that. So why would that be any different way back when? The only difference is now we believe in these things as these actual beings on another dimension that takes a hold of us when we die, versus them actually thinking you can call on these spirits and somehow they would work through you. But you didn't actually go see these beings whenever it was your time was up. They had different beings for that most of the time, and some of it pretty elaborate. But anyways, but the point I'm trying to get at there is that these forces rule you, and this is how powerful they can rule you. Now with our neocortexes now, we have more power over these things, and when we can learn to use our neocortex properly, then this can stop happening. And even more than that, you can help identify and remove these issues with your neocortex, and that's huge. That's absolutely huge and amazing and a great thing. But once again, it can also be used against you. Like I said, you're watching something and you're put into fucking fear, and you're getting fear responses, and you're getting so worried about your family and your kids and this and that, and you're thinking about the fucking person that sneezed on you in the line and how, oh shit, now the coronavirus is back with a vengeance, and it's even worse.